welcome to the monthly blooms video. In this episode, we'll take a look at my African violets that are blooming this month in June of 2021. The weather here is getting really hot in Southern California, and our current home having no central AC, very few plants are blooming at the moment. So I will be showing standards, miniatures, and semi-miniatures all in one video. Here far back is Optimara variety called Optimara Los Angeles. It has girl foliage and it is the only girl leaves variety offered by the official distributor of Optimara in the United States, Selective Gardener. And I grew this plant from a leaf that I purchased from them in 2020. It has dark purple double blooms and girl leaves. Here in front is a Russian standard hybrid by Konstantin Morev called Морозная Вишня. It translates into English as frosty cherry. It blooms with white double stars with crimson mottling, and the amount of pigment usually is temperature dependent. So in the winter it blooms with much lighter blooms, almost white, and in the summer it has much more crimson pigment. It's a beautiful variety. I got it from my local club, Thousand Oaks African Violet Society. Next to it is Cajun's Flamboyant Mistress. It's a standard variety by Belinda Thibodeau. She's the author of all Cajuns hybrids. It has single and semi-double coral pink frilled pansy blooms, and in cooler growing temperatures they have also darker pink top petals with variable thin raspberry edge. I got this variety from Linden Lion. It was my first order from Linden Lion greenhouses in 2019. Behind it is a recent acquisition from Violet Barn. It's a semi-miniature by Janet Stromborg called Allegro Peaches and Green, finishing its blooming cycle, and it's been blooming for a while with semi-double and double peach two-tone ruffled pansies with variable olive green edge. As you can see, some of the central petals have already started fading. Very unusual colored semi-miniature variety. Next to it is one of my favorites. It's a semi-miniature by Sydney Serrano called Booman, with semi-double and double light blue frilled pansies and white feathered top petals with some green reverse. I also like this variety for the shiny, glossy, dark foliage. It's an easy grower too. Here is a semi-miniature by Sydney Serrano and Linden Lion greenhouses called Lion's Little Sweetheart. It grows more like a miniature in my growing environment, so it grows on the smaller side, and it has bright blue double stars with feathery white edging. Behind it is a vintage semi-miniature variety by Folkman called Pinky, with semi-grow leaves and semi-double pink pansy blooms. And in front of it is another vintage variety by Forrest Richter from 1956 called Bonbon. It's a miniature variety with girl leaves and double pink blooms. And I put them side by side so you can see the difference between the semi-girl leaves and the true girl leaves. Together with Bonbon, I got two other plants from the same grower on eBay called Violet Source, and it's a great grower. I've been very happy with her plants. So I got this variety. It's a Russian hybrid called Emerald Belle by Olga Barasheva. It's a semi-miniature with petite green bell-shaped flowers, and it's a prolific bloomer. It's a registered sport of an American hybrid, Max Elegant Emerald. And this variety is famous for its green-colored bell-shaped blooms. This is the first blooming cycle. It's a semi-miniature variety. And also from Violet Source, I got my first Wesley's variety called Wesley's Depth of Reason. It's a semi-miniature by Wes Carter with cupped semi-double bells with lavender thumbprints edged in green. It is absolutely beautiful. It has the blooms that look like as if they were made of porcelain. Such delicate, gracious and beautiful blooms. It has variegated foliage and it's a semi-miniature. Then far here is a miniature variety by Ralph Robinson that is very unique, and I think everybody will recognize it by its looks. It's called Rob's Chili Willy. It has very beautiful white and blue double blooms and crown variegated foliage. And in front of it is a sport of the same variety that I got from my local club. So it's a darker sport of Rob's Chili Willy that blooms with darker blooms and has variegated foliage on leaves as well. And I got the true blooming Rob's Chili Willy from Violet Barn, its native source. Here is a semi-miniature that is an absolute favorite of mine called Scales by Yelena Libetskaya, an African violet hybridizer from Ukraine. It has pink platinum crown variegation and light blue blooms with some white edge, and these are double blooms. I recently repotted it so we can see that it started growing the central little leaves. It's a beautiful variety. I highly recommend it to everyone who likes miniatures and semi-miniatures. I got this one from eBay. Here is a standard variety by Yelena Libetskaya, the same hybridizer that produced Scales. And the standard is called LE Zlata Skifov, or Gold of the Scythians. It blooms with double white blooms, mottled yellow with occasional hint of pink. And next to it, I put another hybrid that blooms with some yellow in the blooms. This is an American hybrid by Debbie Heronshaw and Linden Lyon, 'n' Lion, 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 'n' So if we put them side by side, I see some resemblance, and I wonder if these two hybrids are somehow related. Maybe Sunkissed Rose was a parent plant of L.E. Gold of the Scythians, because they look very similar. I also noticed that this plant, and I got this from Violet Barn last year, L.E. Gold of the Scythians, it has some pigment on the leaves, and I'm not sure what to make out of it. I might just pick a leaf that has the least amount of pigment and maybe try and propagate it and see if the babies have pigment on the leaves as well, because I like when the foliage has consistent color. Here behind is a standard variety by Heinz Dornbusch called Heinz's Sentimental. It has variegated foliage and semi-double and double red pansy blooms, and the color on them looks a little bit washed out because we are now in a very hot growing weather. So I wonder if it has to do with the temperature, because usually it blooms in the controlled climate environment with very saturated dark red blooms, and it's by far one of my favorite red colored blooms hybrids. It has beautiful variegated foliage as well. Heinz's Sentimental. Here is a miniature by Carol Eris called Morgan's Declan Duff, and it blooms without any white in the pansy-shaped blooms that normally bloom with white color and some fuchsia pink thumbprints. And I will include a picture here of its normal coloring on the blooms in the controlled climate growing environment. So this is the first for me, very surprising, because we are now in our temporary rental. We're moving this year, and this apartment doesn't have the central AC. Now here is the tiniest little bloomer, and it's inside of its tiny little mini greenhouse. It's a miniature by Hortense Pittman that I wanted all of the time but couldn't get a hold of it, and I finally found it on Facebook from a fellow African Violet Nerds Facebook group member. It's called Peppermint Girl, and it's a girl-leafed variety by Hortense Pittman with double rose blooms with white edge around the petals. This is the very first bloom, and I couldn't be more excited about it. It's truly very, very beautiful. And here it is without a lid. Peppermint Girl. And last but not least, it is my pleasure to introduce to you my very smallest Gesneriad plant that I just got from my club. We had a very first meeting yesterday after COVID with Thousand Oaks African Violet Society, and this is the new plant that I received from my club. It is in the Gesneriad family. It's not an African violet, but it is its close relative, a Sinningia, and it's a micro Sinningia called Sinningia pusilla. I got it because I'm very excited to grow it in a terrarium, and I looked up its pictures online, And here is a photo of the blooms from the Gesneriad Society. There is more pictures here online if you're curious to check it out. So I'm looking forward to growing this tiny little miniature and seeing it bloom. And here is another family member in case you would like to meet her. That is the prima donna of the house, also known as the head of the household. So these are all of my African violets that are blooming right now. We're in the month of June, and today is June 27th, 2021.